Welcome to NextGen Tech, an S&P Global Market Intelligence podcast where the world of emerging tech lives. I'm your host, Eric Hanselman, Chief Analyst for Technology, Media, and Telecom at S&P Global Market Intelligence. And today, we're going to be talking about the NAB show, which just wrapped up. And to discuss that with me are my guests, Justin Nielson and Peter Leitzinger. Welcome to the podcast to you both. Or I guess, actually, Justin's case, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Eric. Glad to be here.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you both on. The NAB show is an annual event, which I guess originally was known as the National Association of Broadcasters show, but now covers so many different things. They've rolled it up into just the NAB show. It talks about their broadcast capabilities, their consumer electronics that are there, there's content, there's all sorts of stuff. But this is a show that's really been going on for, what is it? It's over 100 years now?
Yeah, actually, NAB had its 100th year anniversary. I think it was a couple years ago. So I've gone to 16 myself and seen the evolution over that time frame. It's been really interesting because, as you said, it kind of started as an industry conference for, US TV and radio station owners across the country and what their challenges and what their opportunities were for the marketplace, looking at advertising trends, looking at distribution strategies. And it's kind of evolved in terms of all of the back end, vendors that they use. And it's actually expanded into more of an international conference. So you have vendors and broadcasters from across the globe coming to Vegas to kind of show their wares and look at different opportunities that they can see in terms of where the next stage of broadcasting business is going to see.
Wow. So a lot that's coming together, but especially, I guess, from our perspectives, if you look at all of the media capabilities that are there, you talked about the advertising aspects, the business of the broadcast, entertainment, and really, I guess, content industries broadly are really in the front and center in terms of what's taking place, as well as all of the cool gear and all the other
you
things
still had that. You still had the fun gadgets and drones, and they actually had an AI robot on the stage during one of the main sessions. So you definitely see the leading edge, I guess you would say, of the technology in the space. But as you pointed to, it is really a content type of show. So be it content being delivered through broadcasting, through cable, through satellites, and now through streaming. So there's a lot of talk around what AI is going to mean to the business going forward, as well as all of the different cameras and lighting and just overall technology to deliver content across the globe.
Well, as our listeners know, we haven't exactly been shy about leveraging AI capabilities in our environment. We use it for edit. We actually built a AI model of my voice that we picked up at episode 100 in celebration of whether or not we really needed humans anymore. But at the NAB show, there's a lot that's going on. It's not only the discussion about the content creation pieces, it's really leveraging AI in a whole range of different use cases and functionalities that are out there. You mentioned that they actually had a robot on stage. What was that highlighting, and are there things we should be taking away from that?
Yeah, it was interesting in the sense that you talk about AI and content creation. I think it's still early stages. So thinking back last year, there was a lot of talk around the actors and writers strike in terms of the creative process and AI kind of impinging upon that creative process in terms of writing and then actually simulating voices and simulating characters within the show or the movie. But I think in this case, it was just kind of highlighting what AI can do in terms of, more on the additive process of the creative content, as well as how they can kind of change in terms of personalization and delivery methods using AI. So more in support of the human interaction in terms of content creation, but also opportunities in terms of extending out and widening the audience using subtitles, simulated voices to kind of interact with consumers, not only in the US, but across the globe.
Well, that's one of those things that I know there's been a lot of discussion about translation. And of course, the media side, their whole industry is built around the translation of various properties in media. Interesting to see where that's headed. Of course, we've seen that broadly in AI use, opening markets, expanding capabilities, making subtitles actually
Right.
a little more accurately represented, those sorts of things. But what are the kinds of things, I guess, from the media business side? Were there aspects there that you saw at the show that were interesting?
Yeah, I think the other aspects are around kind of the personalization and engagement of their viewers and audience. So a lot of talk around how AI can help in terms of content discovery. So actually, sending recommendations and content to the right households or the right consumer, as well as kind of monetizing it. So the advertiser space and actually having appropriate advertising to reach those consumers or those households.
So going beyond recommendation lists, to actually doing specific content targeting and also doing the ad targeting to wrap around that. Again, presumably increasing value in delivery with better targeting, those kind of perspectives. Is that what they were heading for?
Exactly. And then in some cases, actually adjusting the content to match that personalized viewer. So I think Peter can talk a little bit about what's happening in the audio space, but there were actually different AI capabilities where you could kind of take short snippets of music or slow it down or speed it up. So you may see some augmentation in terms of the content as well that allows users to kind of manipulate the content that they're seeing.
Oh, interesting. So, Peter, what are the aspects that you saw there that were interesting?
Well, I had a meeting with Xperi of HD Radio, and they were exploring a lot of different audio technology. They wanted to bring some video technology into the connected car dashboard. And so I thought that was an interesting space where they were using some AI technology to develop different over-the-air music platforms.
Interesting. Well, the connected car is something that we've been talking about on the podcast quite a bit in a number of different angles, and especially in terms of being a delivery platform, something that when you've now got, certainly in the EV market, where you've got cars that have got the computational horsepower to be able to host applications that really are the next stage of an end user device, there's a lot of opportunity there. It sounds like this is something that's looking at a customized delivery of whatever the particular audio format is they're going for. Do they have any details about what they were looking towards?
Just a holistic approach of customizability and seamlessness. You could be listening to your music on your smartphone and enter your vehicle, and it would just seamlessly connect to the genre of music or the type of music that you like. So those kinds of experiences just make that lean back approach that is used in the vehicle just much more user friendly. That's their main goal.
Reducing friction in the end user experience. We talk about that a lot, making sure that if we're in, I don't know if this is something that we qualify as omni-channel, but again, the customers actually got whatever the device is. They want to make sure that the delivery of the content follows them wherever they wind up going. So a simple way to be able to make that a lot smoother and a lot easier than having to restart whatever you were listening to and kick that all over again. So what are other things that were interesting that you saw at the show? You were saying that there were 60 some odd thousand people who were there this year?
There were, and then there was a lot of interesting things to see on the floor. I would say, we've talked about NextGen TV or ATSC 3.0 as the kind of the evolution of the new broadcast standard. It finally looked like we're gaining some scalability in terms of that new broadcast standard. And there was a lot of talk about its capabilities in terms of the ability to do data casting to devices, as well as the expansion of the content pipe, you would say, in terms of the ability to do HDR broadcasts, alternative audio tracks. So I think from the broadcast community, they really see this as an opportunity to kind of future-proof their business, being in an IP-based TV protocol, as well as extending their business model of over-the-air broadcasts into kind of a more hybrid approach where you have streaming, you have broadcast over the air, and then you have potentially a data casting or a spectrum licensing aspect to it. So you can do more types of precision GPS targeting, IoT or connected car delivery in terms of connectivity and location-based advertising.
Oh, we'd started to talk a little bit about some of this. And I guess this is one of those situations where you've got, it's the building out of the ecosystem to enable this next stage of capabilities. Clearly, we've got the connectivity piece, the formatting, but it's the transition of the actual end devices that starts to be another interesting aspect of this. Because, of course, you got to have TVs that are capable of supporting it. You got to have the broadcast infrastructure that's going to deliver it. And then, of course, all the content that gets layered on top of it.
Yeah. So on the rollout perspective from the broadcasters, so they just announced that they reached 75% penetration of the US. So in 75% of the markets, you will be able to access NextGen TV signals. Now, the devices and the capability of users to receive the signal is still in the early or mid stages. So there are TVs, LG and Samsung TVs that do have ATSC 3.0 chipsets in them, but it's really getting those other types of devices, the routers or the dongles, to enable viewers to see these new channels and these new capabilities. From the perspective of the HDR broadcasts, so they had made an announcement that in this year's Kentucky Derby, there will be HDR broadcasts on NextGen TV. So they're really taking the HDR technology and using that as a nice enticing aspect of moving from an HD to an HDR type of video quality. So they're really promoting that in terms of trying to get people interested in the new technology.
Well, it seems like one of these transitions that following that same pattern of, first you've got to get enough of the technology in place so that you can at least do the demonstration front end kind of pieces. Right. It was like getting to 4K. There was that first, how much 4K content is out there, then do some big events. It seems like it's following a similar pattern.
Absolutely. And I think we're only about, well, I hate to say it, but 10 years into this new standard being launched. And if you look at it from a perspective of the analog to digital transition for broadcast, it took about 15, 20 years. So we're kind of halfway through that life cycle.
Well, and I guess given that we've already gotten to a point at which we've got digital delivery on the broadcast side, at least on the video side, that we've made that initial transition. It seems like that next stage is a little more dependent on devices. But it seems like this also is a path that, because it's IP delivered, maybe it doesn't have the same level of dependence on the density of supporting devices. Basically, if you can broadcast over IP, it seems like that opens the full panoply of devices that could actually receive it. You're not working with transitioning an installed base of TVs exclusively. You're now looking at a broader set of devices that could potentially support the transition as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think there's a big opportunity there to get those kind of Google sticks or some sort of dongle added so they could receive those broadcasts and pair it with what they're already receiving in terms of IPTV delivery.
Yeah, so a lot of suitable transitional technologies to be able to get there. Especially when you look at the stick or dongle kind of technologies, that's opened a pathway to bring existing devices into that fold. Not quite so dramatic as the analog to digital transition that we did in over the air, but I think hopefully a little smoother on that front.
You would hope, yes. But there's still a challenge in terms of getting it across, mobile phones and tablets and other devices. I think having the TV as the primary delivery method makes sense in this case, but there's going to be other, kind of challenges in getting it down to the personal device level.
Now, I guess the other aspect of that, of course, is the content infrastructure that drives it. You mentioned they're looking at pushing the Kentucky Derby. Of course, you've got to get that ecosystem of advertisers that are going to support and fund the new technology as well. That's a transition into and of itself.
Absolutely. And, there are constraints in terms of their delivery, their current delivery methods, be it through cable or satellites or telco video. So I think, pushing it from a 4K delivery down to an HDR, which doesn't have the same spectrum constraints, I think was an industry decision to make sure it was an easier transition to the new video standard. The other thing is the additional channels that they can offer. So in some of these cases, it's going to be, maybe a virtual channel. So maybe you only receive that channel if you have, your broadband as well as the over-the-air signal. So I think there's different ways in terms of their distribution strategies where it's not going through one pipe.
Oh, interesting. So there's the potential to basically mix and match in terms of what the capabilities are that you have and deliver it over whichever access mechanism you got available.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if there's spectrum, constraints in terms of one delivery method, then they can also supplement, on the back of the IP delivery. So if you, let's say, have a live sporting event that's really bandwidth heavy, you can maybe deliver alternative views or audio through an IP method.
So this starts to open the door to some of those really high bandwidth applications, like multi-camera view, all those kinds of next gen live event kind of viewing capabilities that we keep sort of talking about, but of course have got to overcome some technical hurdles and really some channel capacity delivery hurdles to get to.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say that's why they're making a big focus on the hybrid nature of this broadcast delivery.
Interesting. So, this really is the make the most of what you have and supplement as you can to be able to leverage additional capabilities or content.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Interesting. So, what's your principal takeaway from the show itself? AI dominates it all, or were there other aspects within there that listeners should be aware of?
No, I think AI was definitely a big focus of the show, but I've been going to the show long enough to know that every time they have kind of a new theme. Last year it was fast. This year it's AI. I think it's really interesting because the broadcast industry as a legacy media, standard has been a little bit slow to adopt new technology. But in this instance, I think they see the opportunity that AI brings. But I think we'll be hearing more and more of it as time goes on. I think it's still very early stages within the broadcast business.
But straight out of the gates, of course, it is, as with everything else on the planet, it seems like the center of most of the hype.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, but one thing, you mentioned FAST, and for listeners who aren't familiar, free ad-supported television. What is, clearly FAST has now marched on to much broader adoption. In the last year, we've seen an awful lot going on in FAST transitions. Although it sounds like it's maybe faded out of the limelight, were there aspects, or was, I guess, some validation that you're seeing at the show in terms of where the progress is in FAST development?
Yeah, I think it's gotten to a point now where the technology is kind of catching up to the actual marketplace, in the sense that, yes, that you can deliver a bunch of channels across a linear stream through a connected TV or through a box like Roku or Google Stick or whatever. But at the same time is how to monetize all those additional channels. So I think that's where they still have kind of a disconnect, because in a lot of cases, that advertising is programmatic. It's less cost, but it's still an area where the studios and the content creators are looking at their library of content, which they built up a very large library over the last few years of content, and seeing ways that they can monetize it outside of your traditional network model, because they don't have the physical media model anymore. So this is kind of taking the place of that physical media model.
Well, and it seems like you then have to have ad marketplaces that are geared towards that particular delivery mechanism, and advertisers that value it.
Exactly.
Basically, you've got to prove that this is a market that is actually valuable enough to pay for advertising or to pay sufficient rates into. Yeah, very much, I guess, sort of a chicken and egg in terms of that market development.
Yeah, and it's actually going to deliver a high value audience for the advertisers. And on the same instance, like, are they going to get any data or any insight on who that viewer is?
Yeah. Is there sufficient targeting? Can you actually know who your ads are reaching? All those questions that we get into monetization, to your point. So, Peter, from your side, any additional highlights that you saw? Other things anything that you didn't expect that you happened to see?
Well, I'll just echo Justin's sentiments on the AI being the top topic of most of the broadcast panel sessions that I attended. But I think a lot of what AI presents is some challenges for broadcasters. While it's a great tool and it can be used for lots of different things like script writing and editorial tools and things of that nature, there's still a lot of challenges that they face from sort of a content IP. Where all that AI content comes from is still a challenge. And I think that they're still hesitant to adopt AI fully.
Yeah, the intellectual property issues, it seems like, what did you get trained on? What is the source? Who owns that model of my voice out there? Yeah, it's certainly a lot of things I guess we're wrestling with, both from an overall rights and licensing kind of perspective, but also some legal aspects as well. So no shortage of potential complications, but I guess a lot to work with on that front. Well, I'll ask both of you, what do you think our listeners should be taking away from the NAB show, and what should they be looking at as they look forward into the year ahead about what came out of NAB and how they should reflect on that and integrate it?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think broadcast is still a very interesting delivery method in terms of video content. I know a lot of talk has been around streaming, but broadcast is still very valuable in terms of the marketplace, as well as the efficiency of the model. So I think that's not talked about enough, is how efficient broadcast is as a model. So from that perspective, I mean, AI is very interesting. It's the talk of the town. But as a legacy broadcast standard, I think it's still got a lot of value and a lot of runway in terms of its availability, in terms of delivering content effectively to an audience.
Yeah, Peter, what are your thoughts?
I would just say that for consumers on the NextGen TV side, that there's going to be some very compelling products coming their way with over-the-air and how they're going to be able to interact with over-the-air TV. There's music channels that can be broadcast. So it's in addition to what you're seeing in the TV space, you can have music channels and you can start and stop and pause television, and the HDR TV, which brings a higher quality resolution to your over-the-air channels, is going to be, I think, very compelling for consumers. So yeah, those are probably the main things.
Another major avenue that gets added to the full universe of media capabilities that the people are able to leverage. Well, interesting things. Well, this has been great, but we are at time, unfortunately. I want to thank you both for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much.
And that is it for this episode of Next in Tech. Thanks to our audience for staying with us, and thanks to our production team, including Carolyn Wright, Sophie Carr, Kate Asplund, and Caitlin Buckley on the marketing and events teams, and our agency partner, the 199. I hope you'll join us for our next episode. We're actually going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be coming live from the conference floor at the RSA Security Conference. So I hope you'll join us then, because there is always something next in tech.